All right, we are live with another episode of Commercial Roofing Radio. And man, I've got a great guest today, Andrew Behrens. Andrew is the founder and owner of Construction Analytics Group. He basically trains all of the Xactimate experts. So he is, in my mind, and I think in everybody's standards, the foremost expert because he trains the experts. Also been in the industry for over a decade. This guy is a legend. Thanks for joining me today, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm good, Alan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped about this one. I think it was Jason Quimby who was like, man, he introduced us. He's like, you got to have Andrew on the show. And I'm like, I know, I've been wanting to have him on the show. I want to meet him anyway. So, dude, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad Jason made the connection. He's a great guy. So,
yeah, I've got something fun prepared later for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire segment. He actually came up with one of the questions.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I'm pretty sure even if you didn't tell me, I could identify his question. So
probably yeah, we'll make that part of it. So the fifth question will be, which question did Jason Quimby come up with? Was it question 1, 2, 3, or 4? So I like it. You got an additional question.
I love
Perfect. Well, I don't know if you've caught any of the episodes. So it's Commercial Roofing Radio. We talk about big roofs and really business to business in general. But I always like to get started with where you got started and how you got into this storm restoration roofing industry itself. Where did that start for you?
Yeah, for sure. So back in 2012 was really my first introduction into the industry. Before that, I was actually in the fire service as a firefighter EMT, and I was kind of pursuing that career path. And you'll find a lot of firefighters have side jobs, things like that. So I was actually introduced with my brother, Matt Behrens, which I'm sure many of you guys know. So C3 started, which was a public adjusting firm, still is, back in 2012. And that was my first introduction into, what is property insurance, what is Xactimate, things like that. And it was really, initially just a throw in to estimation, general claim handling. And it was intimidating for sure, but it progressed into really what I do now, which through construction analytics, I provide expert witness services. I work a lot in construction defects, property insurance, lots of expert witness work. And then I'm also an Xactimate certified trainer. So I do a lot of industry related training. And it's just kind of, expanded off kind of what I loved about the industry. So
you went straight to public adjusting. That's rare. Most people are like, they go through, hey, I was a roof salesman for years, and we used to always make jokes. Adjusters are lazy roof salesmen. They get tired of knocking doors, so they become adjusters. And that was more for IAs and less PAs, because PAs, you typically have to go out and source your work as well, where IAs just get it given to them, the claim handler. Or a lot of people get into public adjusting from IAs. How did you get straight into public adjusting? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So the founding members of C3, really founding member was Mike Lyndhurst initially. And then Matt Behrens, my brother, actually got ownership later on. He was actually also in the fire service, departed. And then they were 50-50 at that point. But to answer your question, before they started C3, they were in roofing sales. Mike Lyndhurst had a pass with public adjusting. So they kind of took all that hit for me, if you will.
Yeah.
My introduction was right into public adjusting, which is rare. So I don't have any sales background in roofing. I've never worked for a roofing contractor. Probably wouldn't want to be honest.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. So you don't get to talk about the tortured years. Like everybody's like, yeah, man, those years when I was a roofer.
Yeah, I did door knocking though. So I was in sales on the PA side, and so I've experienced door knocking, which honestly taught me a lot. And I'm a social guy, so I didn't honestly mind it. But I learned a lot. I was in the outskirts of Denver, knocking doors, hated, but you're just like, oh, okay. I have a service, I have a value. And funny story, one of my taglines was I'd knock the door, they'd open it, and they'd be mad, right? They all are. And I'd just be like, not a roofer.
Not a roofer.
In the storms, they'd have so many roofers that come through, obviously. But it was just funny because people would be like, oh, okay, refreshing, But
yeah.
Yeah.
I've always thought about that. Like, I've worked a lot of Florida markets, and when you come across Florida markets, I mean, PAs are pounding the doors. There's probably more PAs door knocking than there is roofers.
Yeah.
And so I've always thought about that. Like, man, I wonder what that would look like in other markets. Like, imagine like a Denver or anything like that. I never in all my years came across a PA that door knocked outside of Florida. So that's cool that you did that. I want to get into that later for sure.
There were many that, I mean, I would say most public adjusters obviously like have relationships with general contractors, and they get word of mouth spread, stuff like that. But I don't honestly know if I've met door knockers that worked for public adjusting companies either. But I will say back in 2012, it was very, very new, public adjusting in general in the Denver area. So there really weren't many, and we didn't have like a ton of storms. We had the 2011 storm, the 2012 storm hit June 6th of 2012. So that's when it just kind of blew up. But C3 was definitely at the front end of that. So
I mean, I think 2012 was, I think I was working Hurricane Sandy that year. I want to say, and I didn't work my first storm in Colorado until like 2014. And then I believe it was 2014. But yeah, man. So 2012, I mean, and for so long, we didn't use PAs. Roofers, we didn't use PAs. So now I knew PAs back then, but we just never really did. And so 2012, you definitely before that big wave of where we are now, where I think PAs are common knowledge and experts and expert witness and things like that. So yeah, you got in there early, but that's cool what you say about the EMT and the firefighter, right? Thanks for your service for being a first responder. First off, I've got a lot of friends.
I was just part-time, so don't get it.
Yeah. Volunteer. You made the calendar every year. That's about it. I just showed up.
I didn't do that, but I always
Oh, good looking dude, man. You got a nice haircut, looking good to the show. So I see the firefighter. You probably did well at the doors. Like, I get it, man.
You wear like your firefighter beanie when you're knocking doors too. It's like whatever you can use.
Yeah, you probably did suit up, right? Wear the full like suspenders and everything, right?
A lot of women clients. It was kind of weird. Like, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but it was quite the experience. And honestly, what I think people don't really appreciate that part of the, I mean, anyone that works in the fire service, EMTs, I mean, they see some shit,
Yeah.
And it's, and I know I did, like, I have a lot of firefighter friends I still maintain contact with. So it was good context. I'm glad I don't do it anymore, but really good people. So,
yeah, one of my good friends still is, another one of my good friends, and he used to roof with me, and now he's a firefighter EMT. And then another one, a friend from my hometown, he actually just quit after like 10 years being a firefighter to go full-time into roofing. So it's like almost everybody I meet that is a firefighter does have a side job. And it's almost always in construction, relates to roofing. It's kind of weird how that is. And there's even like companies out there that are named like firefighter roofing and stuff like that. They use those key names, probably trying to pull in other firefighters. You
look at like Firehouse Subs. That was started by firefighters. Yeah. So like all of them have some kind of, and a lot of them are actually pretty like entrepreneur type mindset. Guys. So
well, it's smart. If I'm a consumer and I'm sitting here, do I want to go with Joe Schmo roofing or Joe Schmo that used to be a firefighter? I'm going to pick the firefighter every time. Yeah. I have no idea why. It's just
because I mean, in a lot of, so I just had a deposition like last week, and it is kind of interesting because when you have a background like that where you're in public service, I mean, it kind of builds like an intrinsic trust in a way. So it is interesting because when they depose me, I think. When they depose anyone, they want you to kind of look like a dirtbag, so they're like, any felony charges? You're like, no. And they're like, and it's like, they're like, he was a firefighter. Like the jury's going to really like this guy,
Yeah.
So
fuck.
It is kind of cool. And honestly, it's cool for fire losses, things like that, because, I was exposed to, people that got cancer, or at least heard of people getting cancer and stuff like that. So you can kind of bring that emotional component into fire losses and a lot of training too. I mean, the fire service has a lot of building related training, structural things like that. So it's kind of cool. It doesn't really seem that similar. It seems like a total contrast, but really it's centered.
No, I think fire loss would be huge. I mean, imagine you're arguing with an adjuster who's never done anything, never seen anything, probably never even adjusted a fire loss, jumped straight into it. It's like, dude, I used to be a firefighter. Like, come on now. I know.
Well, and too, like a lot of the, people don't really. It's really interesting going to the remediation, restoration side and fire losses, having that background because fire losses are no joke. You hear firefighters getting cancer from their bunker gear that's been washed, like in an industrial cleaner, but it's some of these chemicals don't wash out, so it's like it actually really it's kind of like a kind of a sore spot for me when I see Xactimate estimates. They're just poorly written where you're just sending people back in and they're not, taking care of the real issues that are really human health hazards. So,
wow. Yeah, that's huge. So walk me through your personal transition. Okay. You started out in 2012, door knocking, public adjusting. How'd that go throughout your PA years, right? How did you start out at the bottom, door knocking, selling residential? Did you move into commercial? Were you doing more of the bringing in claims? Were you doing more of the adjusting, more of the estimating, a little bit of all of it? How did that work for you?
Yeah, so right off the bat, C3 was, I would say when they first started, they, like a typical public adjusting company, the adjuster handles the estimate and everything else, all pieces of the claim process and file submission to the carrier. But in about, I think April of 2013 is when they kind of shifted and they were really trying to compartmentalize the estimation role, sales role, public adjusting role, which was huge, I think, for them as a company as well as me as an individual, because it really allowed you to focus on one area that's really honestly kind of intimidating. And you can learn so much, but you're handling all three of those and man, it's pretty overwhelming. So in April of 2013, they placed me in an investigations role. Basically, I was just tasked with investigating losses, generating estimates, and providing it to the public adjuster. So I had my public adjuster license, but I didn't really use it, didn't really have to. But it was nice because I focused on, and honestly, looking back, it's something I've always liked, detail, facts. I'm a technically driven guy. So all the stuff relating to like building instruction, how do you put it back? And then the software too kind of intrigued me. Xactimate's kind of a beast in itself. So there was just so much to learn. But that's kind of where I started and just that kind of just took off. I think I saw pretty soon after that, like a pretty big hole in the industry, like across all parts of it. You look at eyes, cats, internal adjusters, and even the PA side, roofing side. And there really wasn't any consistency to how they approached claim investigations. And then to answer your question too, we started in residential and then that kind of transitioned into multifamily and then it was commercial. So I would say for the first 4 to 5 years, maybe 3 to 4 years, it was residential. So I would do like 200 to 300 losses a year where I'd generate estimates, I'd investigate them. What was cool about that though is you're exposed to so many different types of building materials, different window types. And you're really just consistently thinking like, what are the repair protocols for this building material and this one and this one. So it's just so much exposure. And then that goes on to commercial and all that. And it's different, but it's just the same thing, kind of a similar approach.
I talked to a lot of people that started in residential and moved to commercial, and it's one of those things you gotta, walk before you run type of deal. A lot of people recommend it. You gotta learn, and we had to get what we were given, and that was residential. You don't just start. But if you could go back, would you do that again, or do you think you would go straight to commercial? Because one thing that I've seen is like a lot of what's stopping people from getting into commercial is just up here. It's like a lot of the learning and stuff you can learn, but go straight to commercial. I know personally that would be what I would do. I was like, well, what am I doing going after residential? I would go straight
for the role. I think if you're a roofing contractor, go get into commercial. The margins are better. It's kind of a niche market, and there's not a lot of people that know it. And it's honestly not that intimidating. It's just a different approach. But I would say something I learned from the residential side was just a really methodical approach, and looking back, it's funny. There are inconsistencies on like every level, like I said, on all sides. So there's like the damage assessment inconsistencies. There's, even something as simple as like how you photograph damage. It's really important to take good photographs and build a file correctly. But then you also get into, all right, if it's damaged, how do you determine repairability, things like that. And then it gets further complicated in like, how do you estimate this properly in Xactimate? And then it gets further complicated in, what kind of building codes apply to the loss, So So it was just a lot of inconsistencies I saw that honestly are the exact same with commercial roofing. But I would say for my role, I'm very glad that I went through the residential phase, because it was just this inundation of data and honestly exposure to a very kind of broken and fragmented industry. And then on the commercial side, there's less people in it, but you have the same issues. So it's probably easier, even if you're semi good, to be successful. And on the residential side, it's just, you bang your head against the wall with the stuff you see. And it's smaller stuff, but it's good experience. So,
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, mine is probably, the money has a lot to do with it, right? Bigger claims, bigger money. So commercial, you make more. But it's almost the people that you deal with. I am a homeowner, and I wouldn't want to deal with myself on a claim, like it just personally. And so dealing with a business, it's just a different type of deal, right? It's a different type of way, the person that you're dealing with, different type of expectations. And I find that it can be more reasonable, right? It's a business. It's working for a business.
Oh, yeah.
They understand things and you can help them more. It's almost like you're more appreciated and then you're referred more. I just personally like working with businesses rather than I like working with people. And that's probably where mine goes back to. If I look back on my years doing roofing sales and things like that, does that translate and correlate the same as a PA where you like, it sounds like the residential claims were more interesting in some aspects because they were all different. You learned more. But how was the people different between residential and commercial, the clients?
I mean, I would say that people are different, not only on the owner side or building owner side, but also the adjuster side too, which makes it,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the residential adjusters are treating them very different than a commercial policy adjustment, where they're just used to the components of a commercial property insurance policy and the types of building materials you see. And just they're more savvy people, I'd say, on the commercial side, building owner wise, being that they're more business oriented. They're not necessarily emotionally thinking like, oh man, this is my house. I think it's more like business driven, and it is a better clientele, I think, than on the residential side. But I will say, like on both sides, like the facts are what they are, and if you can communicate it in a concise manner, and you're really driven by, for one, the policy and also the damage, and just being legitimate about what's there, I think you'll succeed on both sides. But it is interesting on the residential side. You have this tendency for building owners to kind of request things that aren't even really owed for, or they have this skewed stance on insurance policy, where I think commercial policies and building owners have a more like just being business oriented. I think they have a better approach to, and they just have a better understanding, I would say, of the claim process.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. Like, if your plant that you've loved for years or your shrubs get damaged, and it's not in the policy that they're going to pay for shrubs, but you have emotional attachment to it, you always find that you have issues with the wife. Whereas if it's a business, it's dollars and cents. It just makes sense. Well, yeah, it's not covered. Yeah. It's not in my policy, Well,
it kind of allowed me to thrive too. And what's interesting about the estimation kind of part of the process is that, like, really the damage is what it is. You input that correctly. The building codes are what they are. You use Xactimate, really, in my opinion, one way. And if you know it, really all the line items should be in there regardless of the estimator constructing it. So it's like, really from that point of view, if you have all this data and you present it, like, sure, the policy may dictate what's covered, what's not, but like, that's what I kind of enjoyed about the estimation process, the investigation process, is it was more, it kind of removed the noise of like the adjustment process, if you will, and like the policy. And of course I still have to be attentive to, coverages and like categorizing them correctly as like law and ordinance, things like that. But it was kind of helpful, I would think, for me, just looking back, and I've never really thought about this before even, but it's just like, I think it allowed me to focus on something that I really enjoyed. And going back to what I was saying before, if you don't have the kind of compartmentalization of, separating those three roles, it's really intimidating. There's just so many things going on at one time, and it's hard to be good at everything. So pick your lane.
That makes a lot of sense. You bring up a lot of good points there that I want to dive into. You talk about like the difference in the investigations. Like, hey, it's simple. Here's the damages, here's the line items, there's your estimate. That's what it costs. So why the hell is it so off? Why is it so hard to get it so in line? I mean, people say you get 10 adjusters to do 10 different estimates. You're going to have 10 different estimates. Not one of those is going to be alike. I think it's more like if you have 10 adjusters to do 10 estimates, you're going to get 30 different ones because of all the damn revisions, because most of those do it wrong anyway. So why the hell can't we get it right across the board? Why can't we be on the same page? Some people say it's just bias. Oh, they're purposely not doing it right because they're trying to save the carrier money and they're biased. Some people are saying that it's laziness, right? These adjusters, they're not looking hard enough. They're not spending enough time. They're not doing proper investigation. Some people say it's education, right? Well, these adjusters just don't know anything. They're just fresh out and they don't know Xactimate. Is it any of those? Am I way off? Are they way off? Is it a combination of those? Why do you think that these carrier adjusters or even other PAs are so different than where they all should be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more complicated than the answer is
yeah.
like the things you hear. I think it's all of those, but it just compounds, But I think, for me, I would on the residential side, and I see the very similar issues on the commercial side of really. You have individuals that aren't trained very well. And then you have issues and I'm talking about the damage assessment side, what even constitutes damage? What am I including for? Do I understand the policy? And then, like I said, it gets more complicated on the software side. It's like, if they've never been instructed by a certified trainer, an affiliate trainer, they can instruct them on how to use Xactimate. And it's more just based on internal guidelines. I think you kind of read this assumption-based use almost, if that makes sense. And an example would be like on residential, I would see windows every time if they were damaged in Xactimate, there would be a retrofit charge. And that always used to annoy me because it's like, if they're retrofitted already, okay, but it's like, do we even know what this means? And I see public adjusters do this too. I see roofers do this. It's just kind of funny where I think when you break that down, it really equates to where's the easy money? I'll just throw in this charge. They pay for it every time. But it's like, guys, if it requires a cutback, repair, you have to make you have to make more considerations, or at least evaluate more considerations if you want to really represent what's actually there and the building as it sits, So I think, is that laziness? Sure. I think is it more of a lack of training, but I think that breeding of kind of, just throwing in assumption-based use of the software is a big issue there. And then on the commercial side, same thing. I think, it's going to complicate things because you're looking at different building materials. Obviously, they're constructed in a different way. You're going to assess them in a different way. So it's like if there's not familiarity with that, a lot of times you'll have residential adjusters or contractors or public adjusters, whatever, or whoever they are, and really use the same tactics on the commercial side. And they just don't work,
Yeah.
But I will say, with that, I think that there's kind of an opportunity because either people get mad, they get spiteful, and they just can't get efficient. They get mad on one project, they're going to actually get mad on that one. And it's like, for me, I was always like, look, if I learn this to the best of my ability and I represent it in a factual way, and this really carries over to the expert work side, because that's really my approach now is like, okay, worst case scenario, this goes to a jury. So every time I'm going to present it like it's going to a jury, or a judge, where if it's not really professionally authored and someone doesn't look at it and say, this guy knows what he's doing, I don't want to even get involved with the file, but that approach kind of takes the emotions out of it. I'm also like, this guy sucks at his job. Is it laziness? It just doesn't matter at some point. It's like, if you're right, you know what you're talking about, and you're presenting it in a good way, you ultimately win pretty much 99% of the time. So,
yeah. I think from all the different PAs I've worked with, all the different, really anybody on the claim side, I as anybody, the people that keep the end in mind are the people that are the best at the job. So the fact that you've done so much expert work, there you have it. That's why I believe that you're so good. At National Claims Advisors, we assume everything's going to trial. So we treat every file like it is. Our goal is to settle everything and not go to trial. That's the last thing we want. But if you treat every single file that way, if you treat every single claim that way, then it's prepared and it's not, it's going to be prepared correctly.
Well, it's just consistency, and I think like on the expert side, it's really interesting to me. I've been brought in on, I mean, it's common. It's several cases. Like, it happens all the time. So I'd say like most cases where you almost get to the finish line of like where you need to disclose experts for litigation. Maybe it's even, in a pre-litigation phase and you're just trying to bring an expert in to get their opinion more as like a consulting expert before you file. And a lot of these attorneys don't even really, or they haven't been able to identify maybe some bad facts in the case where like they're easily identifiable, but they just didn't have anyone credible to tell them that. And to give you an example, especially because we're on commercial roofing podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Radio. There was this ballasted EPDM roof that this attorney had taken to suit. It was already in suit. I think she was looking to disclose experts, which she had to do. And she utilized one of the engineers at C3. His name was Kirk McCluckey, and myself to go out and look at the damage. And there was a public adjuster involved that was saying the whole roof needed to be replaced due to hail damage to the ISO substrate. So we go out there and it's river rock ballast sitting on the EPDM membrane right over ISO. And there's this little area of rock that's kind of swept back. You can tell where they did a test cut. And we're like, it's ballasted. Usually you'd expect to see facer fractures to ISO or even EPS depressions, things like that, depending on the substrate. Yeah. And we do a cut back and we look at photos and we're like, yeah, it's fractured because the rock. I mean, the whole surface of the roof is fractured.
Yeah.
And even if you see the install methods of river rock, I mean, they're using hoppers, they dump it on the roof. So she obviously didn't like when we told her that, but that's what's so interesting about the law side is that, they're attorneys, they're really good at law. They don't know all the moving parts, and it takes 5 to 10 years to get really good at the facts of damage assessment and all that. So it's like, you can't expect them to be experts at that. So you have all these people that they're relying on that, I mean, half of them don't even know what they're talking about. So it's like, then you fill up the courts with just bogus cases, and some of them probably get they get verdicts that are I mean that even makes me mad too. Something that
screws the whole pot, right?
Oh yeah. Something I used to say to my estimators, I had two main estimators that we're still really good friends to this day. Luke and Sean, they're still at C3. And we always used to talk about how like we have just as much an obligation to ensure carriers are paying valid claims as we do making sure that they don't pay invalid claims, Yeah. That's always kind of been my approach. And especially again, on the expert side of being impartial and just fact driven. And, you're not representing anybody. You're just stating the facts, and that's what an expert is. So yeah, I think that's kind of carried through, and that's been a consistent mindset of mine through C3 and even now at Construction Analytics or CAG of just representing facts,
Yeah. I love it. I mean, you can't be biased. You have to be honest. That's the bottom line. You have to be honest. You got to look at it objectively and give your honest opinion on everything. And so many people just get away from that. They're like, it's just fighting this fight and they just want to win so bad and they're stubborn and then they lie or they do things that are unethical. And I think you're right on. And the problem is it's like, yeah, maybe you have this little win. Maybe you get that roof paid for, which in their eyes may be big, but it's little compared to how much you're hurting the entire industry. Because if everybody goes out and gets one roof paid for that shouldn't have been paid for, that affects the whole economic circle that screws everybody in the long run. So it's just easier to go after the ones that should be paid for and should be paid correctly.
Yeah. Well, and there's really like two people in the industry. I feel like two types of people. It's like, there's a lot of inconsistency on the carrier side. And you can either react to that by almost using the inconsistencies to your advantage or just representing the facts, So like I've met a lot of people that they might notice an error, let's say in the carrier estimate, and they just leave it in because they already paid it. And it's like, whatever. But it's like, look, guys, like you're going to get a lot more credibility if you correct it. And you say, hey, I corrected your mistake, even though it actually increased the claim. It shouldn't be in there. So I thought I'd point that out. But my estimate actually is higher, but it's based on facts. Here you go. And it's just kind of that approach that's like, I mean, for one, it's ethical, but also it's like your credibility, like it really compounds over time way faster than you think of. I mean, this industry is so small in general, and it gets out there. So I was
what was it? It was like a training thing, like seminar, boot camp type thing. And there was this PA, notable PA that's all over social media. And he was bragging about how he got he had one claim where he got an extra $100,000 on. And it was because of the carrier's confusion between square footage and squares. He was bragging about it. Like you sat there and you saw an error and then he was taking credit for it. So not only did you see that happen, then you allowed it to go on. And now you're going to turn around and teach classes about it and brag about it. Like it was one of the ugliest things I've ever seen. I won't ever work with that specific public adjuster. Never, ever. Sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that before on the Xactimate side, and I mean, we could talk for 24 hours on this whole topic, right? But it's interesting to me. Like I saw the same thing on this one claim where there was a steeple on a church policy that was dented, and in Xactimate they have like a flat charge. It was like $25K or something like that. But this steeple was really, really small, didn't really fit the description in Xactimate. And Xactimate like that. That's the type of item that they don't really have a lot of options for. So maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't. But like this guy clearly knew it was probably only like 2 or 3K, and he actually got the 25K one approved or something. And I'm just like that's nothing to brag about. You know, it's like, you're inflating about like 10 times. You're on social media. And just to give you, you and I have talked about this before, but in depositions, they will review, I mean, even this, you know, like they'll find anything they can. They'll search my name, they'll find it. So an example of that was one time I was in a deposition, and we're walking through, you know, when I got user certifications for Xactimate, when I got my level 3, when I got my trainer, whatever. And she was like, so did you pass your level 1 the first time you took it? And I was just like, and she kind of just shot it out of the blue. And I was like, no, actually I failed once, but I was self-taught and I learned a lot and I studied more. I took it again and I passed. She's like, I was hoping I'd catch you in a lie there, because I saw a podcast of you like 3 or 4 years ago where you admitted to failing the first time. And I was just seeing if you were honest. And I was like, well, I'm honest. So, but I mean, that seems insignificant, right? Do you lie about that? It's like, I'm level 3. Why does it matter? But, you know, you get caught in even a little lie like that, and they will use it to the fullest extent to make you look like you're a liar, you know? So
I'm a big believer in that. If you can lie about the little things, then it's almost easier to lie about the big things. Because it's like, hey, walk outside. Is it nice out today? No, it's not. You know, it's just some little white lie. The little white lies actually show your ability to lie. And then when you have huge incentives, especially when they're financial incentives pushing you to lie, then you're just more onto, right? It's like, we do business with so many individuals, and you know this, right? The type of individuals that we do business with, especially in commercial, it's big business. And this goes out to anybody in the commercial sector, is you have to know who you're getting into bed with when it's this big business. So ask them questions, find out about them, do your research.
I mean, it's funny how many people they might mess up really bad once and they kind of just change their image almost, and people just latch onto that new image. And it's like, you know, if you're a dirtbag like 10 years ago, like I can still
probably
find it.
Dirtbag today. You know, I try to be. Yeah, I try to forgive people, and I do. I always forgive people. I try to forget about their past, but it's like some of these people like reinvent themselves a month later, and it's like you expect me to believe you're a whole new person. You're not going to fuck me over financially when you just screwed over a whole bunch of people. And it's like, who are you today? You know, be mindful of who you're doing business with. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah. And I mean, especially when. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So I want to talk more about the being an expert and doing that and that transition from PA. So you fell in love with the investigations, and we've already talked a little bit about you being an expert, but how does that transition go? What was your first expert witness like? How did that come about? Is there any story there you want to say? Just tell me more about that transition between PA to expert.
Yeah. So the first one I was involved in, I mean, I guess as a preface to that, you know, the investigations process, it became very like methodical for me, like photographing it was very important in the right manner. And then just presenting an Xactimate estimate that was the most detailed thing, the most accurate thing with, I mean, sketch galore, like it very visual, you know, so just the package overall was like aesthetically pleasing, but also it was like factually driven. which isn't very common in the industry. There's not consistency. So I think that naturally kind of pushes you to expert work. And then my first opportunity was really just that. It was, hey, we need a second opinion on this estimate. We have a public adjuster. It's in litigation, whatever. Their estimate, we're just kind of skeptical about it. We just want it to be right. So I went in there, and yeah, sure enough, it wasn't right on this specific one. They put into like power wash and resurface all of the asphalt for the telehandler use, and the job hadn't even been done yet. The roof hadn't been done yet, so they were just expecting and you're just like, no, stop. What are you doing? But on that one, it was interesting because I hadn't really heard or learned what a Rule 26 report was. I didn't know anything that I never reviewed Rule 26 for like their requirements for expert witness testimony. So the good thing was, I think an attorney that knows you're the guy to go to for a fact-driven assessment of their case, they're willing to kind of give some back and forth of, hey, I'll train you on how to become a better expert, or here's an introduction or whatever. So that kind of started happening, and I was like, wow, I'm kind of intrigued by the expert side because it's something I've always enjoyed. It's something I'm good at. And obviously, like, there's an attraction to kind of pull me into that. So once I started doing it, what was interesting is experts that are very, I would say, very established in the expert side and just litigation overall. Like, you'd expect there to be so much detail in litigation and there to be expert reports that are always objective and whatnot. And it's just not the case, So it even more attracted me. Yeah, it's worse. I mean, but I think that ultimately was kind of the driving factor of getting me into expert work, if that makes sense. So
no, that makes a lot of sense. You just want to get it right, and you just want to be right. There's a lot of pride to that. I can tell. I can just tell from talking to you that you have a lot of pride in your estimates. I want them to be correct, and then your expert work. It's like this is the right way to do things.
It's interesting because on the Xactimate side, estimate side, I remember I had generated these estimates for public adjusters, whoever was a C3 handling the claim at the time. And I remember them getting pushed back on certain items or whatever. And you're just like, I don't have the time to write this beautiful report on all the files I handle. And I wish I could, but I just don't. And that's what's cool about the expert side is you have to show your methodology. You have to show your approach. It has to be have the ability to be replicated and all that. So it's like, I like technical writing. I like explaining things, and I feel like I'm pretty good at doing that. I like instructing as I'm a trainer. So it's like you kind of have to be a training type person if you want to be really good at testimony because you're training a jury or you're walking them through a case.
It makes sense.
So expert work was kind of my opportunity to do all that in a report. So it's something I just latched onto real quick. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. So do you only do expert work for big claims? Do you do it for residential? Do you do it across the board? How's that look?
Across the board. Today I'm looking at a property later up in Greeley where a contractor installed coping on this EPDM roof, and they exchanged that for, I think it was just a term bar. And it became this big dispute of, the code upgrade that they installed wasn't even required. So does the carrier owe for that? But also in the process of doing that, they chipped up a bunch of CMU block on the parapet walls, and then it went into painting, and then the carrier's like, no. So it's just become this big thing. So I'm looking at that, and then I have a deck collapse on Thursday. I have a big commercial claim the next week. I have a bunch of fire losses. So it's really all across the board. I would say, as an attorney, if your case is worth obviously filing for, you're going to have to disclose experts to prove your case. So that can be really all over the board as far as the price goes. But I would say I do, 20-30% defect work. And then the other percentage is property insurance. And then I also do consulting work too. I'm kind of pushing for, especially in states where public adjusting isn't necessarily as effective as it once was. I'm a big proponent just because I saw this work at C3 and I know the expert side and I know the end of the process. So it's if you can get an expert involved on the front end that's representing fact and they're always impartial, they're always objective. I never charge contingency. I stay away from them. I've never touched them ever since I started my company, and I never will because I think that, if you get a report from someone that's charging a contingency, that doesn't really make sense, I think if you're paying for an opinion, it should be on an hourly basis. And what's cool about that is if it goes to appraisal, if it goes to litigation, you can be redesignated because you've always been impartial. So if I'm initially a fact expert or a fact witness, I can be redesignated later through disclosures as an expert witness. So
Wow.
Again, just kind of right up my alley, but kind of interesting seeing how certain states are going the way they are, too.
That's huge. I mean, there's so many debates out there, and even states like the big one's Louisiana, right? Louisiana does not allow contingencies for PAs, but there's so many PAs out there that are beating their chests, bragging about finding loopholes, right? And still charging a contingency on something else. And at the end of the day, it's still a contingency fee. It derives that if that claim grows, you make more money. Like, let's just break it down to the simplest form. And it's funny, you're a teacher and an instructor. I think that's the quality of the best teachers and instructors, is breaking things down to their simplest form. Dumb it down, right? Yep. So if we dumb this down, if you find a loophole in a contingency there, you still make more money. The bigger the claim goes, it's still pretty much contingent, right?
Well, I'm not sure that anyone is really latched, at least to my knowledge, anyone that's really latched onto that being like a permanent kind of trajectory in their profession of, I'm not doing contingency. I'm just not, but I think it kind of fills a void of the industry where there's currently a big one. And that's where, like, on the carrier side, you have all these engineers. We could speculate all day long on, like, incentives and things like that. But it's like, realistically, like, this side of the industry, the policyholder side, doesn't really have experts that are impartial and objective, that know policy, that know the whole process, that can fill all these voids that need to be filled for the purpose of, submitting a factual claim package, or even in litigation, And if they do, a lot of times they'll do, or maybe their primary work is contingency work, or maybe they're a contractor, which is fine, but there's not really anyone that's focused just on that and
just on that. Yeah.
So, yeah.
What about the future of the industry on this claim side of things? People are out there all the time, like, guessing, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And you see these predictions, the industry in 5 years. I mean, we talk about 2012. It was 2012, just over 10 years ago. And it's like, there were not PAs. PAs weren't common knowledge. This type of experts, it wasn't common knowledge. It wasn't out there. And maybe social media has a play to that. Maybe all of it was out there, but people just weren't aware of it, thanks to this smaller world, thanks to social media. But I feel like it's grown tremendously over the last decade, and you see new laws changing. Where is it going? What's your feeling on that? Do you have an idea what people are experts going to be used to begin with from now on? Is that what the industry is moving towards? What do you think?
I mean, I think it really depends on the state. I think, like, you look at Florida and Texas. I mean, Florida specifically, it's becoming a nightmare. And I think on the public adjusting side, especially, like, it's just not, and I've talked to attorneys about it. It's just not as effective as it once was. And I think it's only going to get worse. So I think, the big thing for me is, like, and I hope there are states out there. I mean, Colorado's still good, like there are a lot of states out there that have really good frequent losses, like hail events, et cetera, that I think will always occur. But I hope those states stay that way, where public adjusting is effective and it's protected as it should be. And there's also ethically driven public adjusters that work in that area, because that's what's really creating a lot of these issues too, is like that, a lot of these changes in each state, like Florida and Texas, they're using the worst of the worst in the industry as an example to propel this agenda that public adjusting is bad. And honestly, it kind of seems accurate based on some of these people and what they're doing, So I think, I think if the industry on this side was perfect and we really watched our act, and public adjusters really watched our act, and I think that would help a lot. But also, I think, the other side is a bit more powerful there. So again, why you just have to handle the claim handling process properly and ethically, and don't be an example to be made fun of. Don't be on Steve Badger's wall, on LinkedIn. That's not a good place to be unless he's touting you as a credible individual, which he does do. So
sometimes he does.
I know I wouldn't want to be on there, but like, Mr. Behrens, like,
Mr. Behrens. It's crazy to me. It's like, the carriers are dictating a lot. They're changing a lot of things, and they're using bad actors to do that. It seems like contractors are almost completely pushed out. The UPPA laws were first. They went after the contractors. Now it seems like they're going after the PAs, right? They're picking them off. They're going from the easiest ones to pick off, and then they're moving up the ladder. And it looks like Florida was almost an attempt to go straight up after the attorneys, right? We're attacking attorneys' fees. We're attacking this. So we're all getting squeezed. So hopefully the bad actors get the hell out. And, I'm all for getting the bad actors out. But boy, man, I think we should get them out first. I think it'd be nicer if we could get them out before it gets to that point. Like, guys, quit supporting this shit.
It's, that is so something and you talked about kind of, contractors are kind of pushed out, public adjusters are attacked, contractors are being pushed out. But for me, I think there's a lot of power and I saw this at C3 of just like sometimes the claim would get settled just off the damage package being factual. But there's always that challenge of I was still technically partial to the outcome of the loss, even though it was very indirect. I was the public adjuster. My name wasn't on the contract getting 10% of the proceeds, whatever, if a recovery was made. But it was always kind of a hard spot for me to be, being that I was in an organization that was based on contingency models, But stepping outside of that, what's kind of cool is and I think that there's going to be contractors that have really big opportunities to kind of figure out which way they want to go with this. And this is by no means, just spit on the public adjusting industry at all. I think it's very much needed in certain cases. No. But I think what always is needed is a claim file or an estimate that is really objective and factual, regardless of where you're at, whether you're just at a first adjuster meeting or appraisal or litigation. It's like if you have a consistent approach to that and how you assign a cost to that, and it's really generated by someone that's an expert at that, then I think the carrier gets it. And there might not even be a PA involved, but they're like, man, if we deny this, there's this report in the file now. Attorneys will see it. Mediators will see it. Appraisers will see it. Umpires will see it. And it's like, this is a really good piece of information that's not just going to go away. And I think if we focus on that, it solves a pretty broad issue where now it's just kind of pinpoint. Let's attack public adjusters. Let's limit AOBs and AOCs. Let's, do this and that and that. But it's like you hone in on the facts, and it's like those are what win anyway. So, I don't really know where that's going to go. I think it really does depend on the state, but everything's going to be
different state by state for sure. I mean, I just want to see more of an ethical approach on our side. I mean, you're ethical, and I really do love what you're doing and how you're doing it with, hey, I'm going to stay ethical. I'm never going to charge a contingency fee. It's always going to be an hourly rate. I am an expert. I'm going to go out and do right by the property, do right by the policy. You're protecting the property, you're protecting the policy at the end of the day, right? And that's going to be best for the policyholder. That's going to be best for the carrier, and that's going to be best for us on all sides. So I think that's the right way to do it. I do want to, we're getting a little bit later in time, so I want to be conscious of time and move into my favorite segment of the show, which is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So were you a big fan of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So I think you're a bit younger, probably close to my age, maybe younger.
I was probably like mid 2000s, late 2000s, 2000, probably 5, 4 was it? Like that was kind of the big time period. But even before that, I mean, I don't remember when that show started. It was late, like 98.
Yeah, I think it was a 90s thing. I'm claiming it's a 90s thing, and it's my podcast, it's my story, so I'm going to say 90s. Right.
I love it.
So I was a big fan of it. I like it. It was one of my favorite game shows. A lot of drama in it, right? I always thought I was answering the questions better than the guests, so there's competitiveness there. So it's a little bit different on commercial roofing radio, our version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So first, we don't have a live audience, so we cannot ask the live audience what their questions are. But we still give you 2 lifelines, phone a friend, and 50-50. So and those can be used at any time, but they can't be used on the same question. And my goal is to stump you. So I've got questions to stump you on these. But let's go ahead and get started with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Sounds good.
All right, let's go. My first question. So you are, I hear you are a big outdoorsy guy. You live in Colorado. You like to go hiking. big hiker, avid hiker. I saw something somewhere about a guy it was a comedian, and he was joking. He's like, you can't tell me that you're not happy, that you can't find happiness. People like to get up and go walk up mountains, and it makes them happy. Like, it's kind of a weird thing. I never thought about that. I'm like, you're walking.
True. Yeah,
like that makes people happy.
just yesterday, I did a 14er. Actually, I did that. I'm actually a little tired. I got like 2 hours of sleep. I did Missouri Mountain, which is out by Leadville, Colorado.
Oh yeah.
I'm a little tired, a little sore. It's hard to stand up, but I'm here.
There you go. Well, man, it's popular. So you're not the only one that likes to do it. And that's what this question is. So approximately how many Americans go hiking every year in the United States? Is it A, 1 to 20 million, B, 20 to 50 million, C, 50 to 100 million, or D, 100 million plus Americans that go hiking in the United States every year?
Oh man, that's tough. I would have to say B. I'm gonna guess B.
You're just right. You're just going for it. Right on. Is it? Do you have Google up on the next screen? Is that what this is? Yeah. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. It's your eyes. So what's your thought process between B?
I think my thought process there is certain people in some state. Can we define hiking? Is this just getting outdoors? Like, is this a walker on a small lake in Oklahoma? Like, what is this?
That's what I was thinking. How do they poll this question? Like, does everybody that go hiking, is it who uses the All Trails app? Is it just that thing? I mean, how many times a year do you go hiking? So, there's this many people. But so again, you're going to stick with the B, which is 20 to 50 million. Is that your final answer?
I think so. Yeah.
I think so. You got it right. 20 to 50 million Americans. Yeah. You just shot it out there. I think you just like the letter B, maybe. Yeah, you just picked B. I have no idea.
To be honest, I even if I was cheating on my second screen, I have no idea what to search for that. But
no idea what to search for. There we go. We got it. So yeah, to me, again, 20 to 50 million Americans go hiking every year. That's pretty cool. And that's go hiking in the United States. So technically that wouldn't count the people that go out of the country to hike. There's a lot
small lake in Oklahoma, that's that's you count,
You count for sure. Okay. So we'll move on to the next one. Again, two lifelines available. So you like to, apparently you're a flying guy. Are you a pilot?
I have my private pilot's certificate.
Private pilot certificate. Okay. So I figure you're a big plane guy. You like to fly. And then in addition to that, we've already talked about how you like your technical aspects of things. You like to build things. With estimates, it's all about rebuilding something, looking at it from all the different parts and pieces. Well, putting both of those together, the second question is, how many parts are there in a Boeing 747? So how many little pieces does it take to build a Boeing 747? Is it A, 6 million, B, 121 million, C, 747,000, or D, 28 million parts to build a Boeing 747?
Oh man, I would have to say, can I know I'm just throwing these out there. C, the 748,000, is that right?
It's 747. Yep.
Okay, 747. Wait, say those in. Say them again, sorry. I just want to make
6 million, 121 million, 747,000, or 28 million.
And it's a Boeing 747?
Boeing 747, yep.
So it seems illogical that C would be that. It sounds like you just added like 100,000 multiplier to it.
Maybe that's what that number comes from. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
maybe the 747 counts the parts in there.
Yeah. Oh man, that's tough. So I hate to do this to me. The millions. I'm getting a little lost there. You might have to tell me the list of the millions again. Just one more
6
time.
million, 121 million, and 28 million are the millions.
Okay. 6 million.
There you go, 6 million. You had to take that extra time to type out the answer over there?
No, I'm not. I'll put
6 million. All right, is that your final answer? 6 million.
My final answer.
All right, you're correct. 2 for 2. Look at you. Yeah, to be fair, that 747,000 that was totally put in by me to throw you off. Or
Could have done 746 or something.
746. Yeah. Because it was Boeing 747, 747,000.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, you're 2 for 2, so you're doing well. Okay.
How many others? You got how many?
There's 4 questions. 4 questions. So we keep it short. We keep it simple. So you only have 2 left, and you have 2 lifelines. You're probably going to have to use them both. The next one is an Xactimate question. So Xactimate has been around for a while. It is pretty much the go-to, the standard in the industry. But not many people know when it was actually created. So when did they start Xactimate? Is it A, 1979, B, 1991, C, 1986, or D, 1989?
Oh man, that's a good one. I might use a lifeline for this one, honestly. I should know this, but I feel like those dates are close together, so it gets a little tough.
It gets hard when they're that close, right?
Yeah.
I think you probably need to use a lifeline so that way you get to use them both, unless you just want to go with no lifelines through the whole competition. But we'll see.
Yeah, I should probably use one. I might call one guy.
Okay. Perfect.
His name is Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson. Let's do it.
You ever heard? All right.
Mr. Larson.
I rejected his call earlier, so.
Perfect.
Let's see. Can you hear my phone okay?
Yep.
Andrew, what are you doing?
Kyle, I'm on a podcast and I had a question for you.
You're on a podcast right now.
Heck yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But that's right. You might be smarter to answer this because there's like a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire segment. And, you have more experience than me and you go back a little further than me. But do you know when Xactimate was? What was your question, Alan?
When was Xactimate created? Is it 1979, 1991, 1986, or 1989?
So it was 79. Say the numbers again. I'm sorry.
79, 91, 86, or 89?
I want to say 86. Maybe.
He's saying 86, yeah. I guess if you're going with that call, I'll let you know if you're right or not. And I'll call you a little bit later. If that's cool.
You don't get to know now?
I don't know, dude. Does it get to know now? How's this work?
Yeah, you can. Is that your final? Are you going to go with him, or you different? Where's your head at?
If I don't go, I have trust issues. So yeah, I have to go.
So yeah, you got to trust him. So 1986. That's your final answer, Kyle, right? Is that your final answer?
Yes.
86. You are correct. 1986. There you go. Wow.
You rock, Kyle. Look at you. Now I'm 3 for 4. So you're the man.
Yep.
What do I get? You're going to send me $1 million?
You get to be on this podcast. Is what you get.
Yeah.
How do you know what podcast?
It's commercial roofing radio. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Perfect.
I know a little bit about that, so.
There you go.
Man.
I'm glad I could provide something.
Yeah, no, and that you did. You got it right. So I appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
All right. See you later, Kyle. I'll talk to you later.
Have a great day. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
So it's actually a tough question because if you do Google it, 1989 pops up.
Yeah.
I had to look it up, and it was actually 1986 that Xactimate. 1989 was Xactaware, which is more the software. And now, interesting enough, people talk about how Xactimate is owned by the other side all the time. That's why people hate it. Do you know the story there, how that came to be?
I honestly, I've heard it before. I honestly kind of don't care and some extent.
Yeah. So apparently it was a group of insurance carriers that bought Xactaware, and then they did it with they created a group called ISO, Insurance Software something or another, and then ISO purchased Xactimate, and then they started making a lot of money on it, so they wanted to go public. So ISO had a holding company called Verisk, and now Verisk went public back in
look at how big they are.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So it's on its own 2 feet, that's for sure. The next question, this one is going to be a TPO question. So commercial roofing. Let's go. So what year did the first TPO membrane get installed? Is that 1986, 1984, 1989, or 1979?
I'm going to do the 50-50.
You're going to do the 50-50.
Might as well. Can't waste it.
Perfect. So we are going to get rid of C and D. So it's either A, 1986, or B, 1984.
I'm going to go 1986.
We go A, 1986. Is that your final answer?
It is.
You got it. There we go. 4 for 4. Andrew, I think you're first place on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. 1986. Really? Yeah. There you go. You're the first one to answer all the questions correctly. Now, that's kind of funny that 1986 is the same with both questions. But we've got a fifth bonus question for you. So Jason Quimby helped me come up with one of these questions. I let him pick one question. Was it the first question, the second question, the third question, or the fourth question?
Oh, man.
So there was the hiking question. There was the Boeing 747. There was the Xactimate. Then there was the TPO.
I'm going to say the hiking question.
I'm going to say the hiking question. A. Is that your final answer?
It is.
I finally beat you on one. He came up with the TPO question. All right.
You're surprising me, Jason. Going like, oh, yeah. Technical.
Yep. Technically, I already had the other three questions. And then I was like, okay, give me a question. He probably would have done a personal question like that if I didn't already have it.
Yeah. He knows I like to hike. So that was my reasoning there.
Yeah. He helped me come up with like, okay, what does Andrew like to do? He says he's outdoorsy, but specifically what type of outdoorsy? And so he helped me there.
Yeah, awesome.
But man, this was an awesome show. Definitely a cool episode. I'll have to have you on another season and we can talk more in depth about like specific claims and things like that. I always like those type of stories, but hell, it was amazing. But if we've got people watching or listening at home, that's either like commercial roofing contractors, residential roofing contractors, experts, people like PAs or, like attorneys, and they're looking for your services, looking for your help, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my cell's 303-501-3002. And then my email is just andrew@constructionanalyticsgroup.com. I'll make you type it all out because I want you to remember it.
Construction Analytics Group.
Yeah, that's right. And then I also have a website that actually houses all my training content, memberships, things like that. And that's trainwithcag.myabsorb.com.
Love
that's
it.
The kind of the training portal. So,
yeah, guys, if you're looking for some training, that's probably the place to go. I mean, this guy trains trainers. So I don't know what that's called, but you train trainers. Is that sensei or guru? Right?
So essentially, like, there's the certified trainer program and the affiliate trainer program. So certified trainers can train anybody. So I don't necessarily train trainers. Actually, when you want to get your training designation, you actually go to Xactware's headquarters in Lehi, Utah.
Yeah.
And you get your training designation there. And then from that point, you're either an affiliate trainer or a certified trainer. And the only difference is affiliate trainers provide more internal training. So like State Farm will have an affiliate trainer, but that trainer can't train anybody. It's only that basically organization. And then the certified trainers are basically, you have to teach a class where Xactware sends someone out and watches you, and they're like, good, you meet our standard and you're certified now. And then so there's two trainer types. And that's
so moral of the story, he's the best of the best, and hire him for training if you need training. By far. Okay, well, I appreciate you being on the show, man. You have a great rest of your day, brother.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.